The market is shifting. There's still some uncertainty about what's happening with the economy and all that stuff, but you can still purchase a home. And I'm gonna tell you how me and my wife did it, so just stay tuned. Hey everybody, Dietric Williams, realtor with Compass, Baldwin Hills, California. Welcome back to another edition of Info on the Go, the show where I give tips, tricks, and insight on how to buy, sell, or invest in real estate the easy way. If that sounds like content that you're interested in, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so that you're notified every time I upload new content to YouTube. Now, I do apologize once again. I know I left the shorts. But I'm sorry I have not posted content for quite some time. And as I told you, my wife and I were in the throes of purchasing a home and doing a lot of the home renovations that we wanted to do ourselves. But as promised, I'm going to walk you through our home buying journey. So if you've been watching my channel for the past couple of years, you know that I love to give insight on how to just navigate through this real estate market. So I'm gonna take the realtor hat off for just a second, and I'm gonna put the buyer hat on, and I'm gonna give you my own personal experience of how it was going through this process. Now, my wife and I actually have been looking at homes to purchase a home for years. In 2019, we decided we were gonna actually jump in when the market was kind of blazing hot and everything was going on. When we went to go get pre-qualified, we didn't make as much income as we thought we did. Here's what wound up happening. In 2018, I had a really bad year in real estate. It was really, really bad. I think I had like one deal and maybe like 2 referrals. So I didn't make a whole bunch of money. 2017 was good. 2018, not so good. Now, why is this important? For those of you who are self-employed, when you go to purchase a home, your lender is going to take your income over a 2-year period, and then they're gonna average that together. So my 2017 was good, 2018 was bad. So when they averaged it together, it was really, really low. And that didn't help us to qualify for any homes in Los Angeles proper that we wanted. So we put our plans on hold for a couple years, and we really buckled down and decided to strategize how we were gonna do it in the future. We essentially lived off of one paycheck, hers, and then any commission checks I got, we saved up to either pay down debt or save for the down payment. Again, sacrifice, but if you're willing to make the sacrifice, in the end of the day, it could be well worth it. Another thing that we did was, when it was time for us to apply for a mortgage, we knew we were gonna have to file a tax return. We intentionally did not take any deductions. Now, some of you, this may not work for you. Others, sound strategy. Why is this important? Because when the lender looks at your income, they're gonna look at your income, but they're gonna subtract out whatever deductions you took on your taxes. So for example, if you made $100,000 in income, but you deducted 50,000 of it, the lender is only gonna count $50,000 towards your qualifying income. And we wanted to maximize the amount of income so that we could maximize our purchase price. That's why we took the hit. Now, it was a $10,000 hit between federal and state. We used some of that money that we had saved up for the down payment to take the hit, but again, it qualified us for a lot more home. Another one of the things that we did was look at down payment assistance, or DPA programs, specifically for my wife, as she is an educator, and there's a lot of deals out there, a lot of programs that are available for educators, first responders, things like that. So as we started doing our research, we noticed that there were a lot of great programs, but there were some caveats to them. Many of them came with what's called a silent second mortgage, which means you have a second mortgage that you don't have to pay until one of a few events happen. Either you resell, refinance, or that property is no longer your primary residence. Now, there's also some other components to this. For some of these programs, there are what I'm gonna call kind of wait periods. So anywhere between 3 and 5 years, depending on the program. If you sell within that time, you have to repay that money back in full. But after 3 or 5 years, depending on the program, that repayment drops off. So let's say it's a 5-year program. Every year, 20% of that loan drops off, and that's less money that you have to pay back. So if you move at the end of 5 years, or you sell at the end of 5 years, you don't pay anything back. Another component of these was an equity sharing piece. And in that, it's whatever equity you built up when you go to sell the home, whether it's 3 or 5 years afterward, The entity that gave you that money is entitled to a certain percentage of equity share. It could range anywhere between 20 and 30% of the equity that you've built up. So you just want to keep those things in mind, because when they say it's free money, it's not really free money. So being in real estate, I have access to all types of lenders. I have my preferred list. I have lenders that come referred to me. And so we had our pick of the litter to choose from. So we shopped 4 different lenders and we compared rates, terms, conditions, offerings, all of that stuff. Side note, when you go to shop for a mortgage, make sure you're talking to more than one lender, because you want to see what's out there. You just want to be able to explore your options and do your due diligence in terms of what are the best terms, what are the best rates that you can possibly get for your situation. So we looked at 4 different lenders. We got different programs that they were offering, from Cal HAFA to the Sapphire Grant Program. We looked at NACA. We looked at Freddie Mac, a conventional. We looked at FHA. We looked at all types of sort of programs. And the interest rates ranged in these programs from 3% up to north of 5%. Now at the time, 5% was pretty high. That's because some of these DPA programs come with higher interest rates. So just think about it. You as a borrower are more of a risk because you're receiving free money, which again is not really free. So because of that risk, they're going to tack it on to your interest, which is why you pay more. Our pre-approval amounts also range from, I think, like $460 up north to close to like $710. And it depended on the program, depended on what type of property we were buying, whether it was a single family home, a condo, or a townhouse which would have HOAs attached to it. Now, when you're purchasing a property that has an HOA, for every $100 worth of HOA fees, that decreases their purchasing power between $20,000 and $25,000. So if you're looking at a $300 HOA, that's like 75 grand that you no longer have purchasing power for. Now, we started this process probably, I would say, completed taxes sometime around mid-March, late February, mid-March, somewhere around there. We talked to lenders, we shopped out different lenders, and then we decided to go with the one that we chose. So by that time, we're probably, I would say, April-ish, somewhere around there. And then we start searching for homes. Now we're searching for homes, and obviously we're going through some of the same stuff that other buyers are going through, where we're getting beat out on all cash offers, people waiving appraisal and inspection, and loan contingencies, and all this crazy stuff that I normally would tell people not to do. And we didn't do any of that stuff. We were very strategic, again, about all this stuff. So it took us a little time to actually find places that we were interested in and put bids on. During this process, the economy took a little bit of a shift, and the Fed raised the Fed funds rate, which necessarily doesn't correlate to interest rates on a mortgage, but because of the uncertainty in the market, it had a trickle-down effect, and interest rates shot up from 3.5 to 4, and then jumped up over 5. And like many buyers, we felt the pinch of all that going on as we saw our purchasing power start to decrease bit by bit by bit. I think we wound up losing like $100,000 worth of purchasing power just based on what happened in the market. So at this point, we're kind of like a lot of you out there, people that I motivate and encourage, and we're getting discouraged because we're like, there's nothing that we can afford in the city that we want. So we said, maybe we should start looking at different cities, some that necessarily we're not interested in, but we want to get our foot in the game, at least in LA. Like, I had purchased property before as an investor, wound up selling it. That's a long story, but that was years ago, got married, and then we decided we're gonna do this thing together. So we needed to get our foot in the game. So we started looking at outlying cities, and we looked at a specific city that I won't name. And then we had a Zoom call with our financial advisor. And one of the things that they said was, this city will probably on the cusp of growing. And it's one of the cities that we had looked at. And when I called him later, he said, Dietrich, as an agent, you skate to where the puck is going, not where it's already been at. And once he said that, I was like, okay, let's make our move. We had saw this property, a 2-bed, 2.5, almost 1,400 square foot townhome in a city that, again, we weren't necessarily looking in, but as we started doing our research, we looked at some of the developments that were happening around it. We toured the neighborhoods. We asked different people. Surprisingly, we had found friends and associates and colleagues who had either moved to the city, lived in the city, or were planning on moving to the city sometime in the near future. So that gave us a little bit more reassurance that we were picking the right place. Now, this house was listed for $435,000. What? You couldn't find a 2-and-2 1,400 square foot home in almost any place in Los Angeles that was in that price range. So when we saw it, we were kind of like, something must be wrong. But again, as we started doing our research, we were like, hey, this could be the thing that we need to help us get in the door, create that generational wealth. And we already had plans of what we were gonna do with it in the next couple of years in terms of pulling out equity and leasing it out and all these other things. But we put a bid on the property. As an agent, I was like, let's go in at $450. We will shorten our contingency time frame. So we did a 10-day home inspection, 10-day appraisal, and then I think we did a 15-day loan contingency. Now, all of this I could do because I talked to our lender and we had almost gotten fully pre-approved or fully approved while all of this process had been going on. So it was just a couple of little things that we needed to do just in terms of getting the appraisal and all the stuff about the property taken care of. So we did all of that. I think I sweetened the deal. We paid for the natural hazard disclosure. Side note, those aren't very expensive depending on the company. In the state of California, they're required. I think it's like, it could be $75 depending on what company you use. Most sellers don't know this. So when they see that we're gonna pay for it, they're like, sweet, but it's 75 bucks. The other thing that I did to sweeten the deal was I agreed to credit the sellers toward their transfer taxes, city and county, which is like $1.10 for every $1,000 worth of purchase price. So in this instance, we credit the sellers $1,500 toward those costs. Now, here's a little bit of a secret. This won't work for some of you out there, but as a licensed agent, my company allows me to purchase property that's 100% commission. They took out like one small fee, but the rest of it was all mine. And I use that money to pay for the credit. I also credited the buyer, in this case us, $5,000 toward closing costs and another $600 towards a home warranty. So we didn't come out of pocket for some of this stuff. And then being an agent, I also know how to negotiate the deals and what to look for and the questions to ask. So the process went really smoothly. That should be an indication to you that whoever you use as an agent, make sure that they are well versed in how to negotiate, communicate with you, and get all of these things taken care of so that your process can go as smooth as ours did. Now, I don't imagine it's gonna go as smooth because you don't know what you don't know. But being in this situation, I kind of knew what to ask for and what to look out for. So it gave us an advantage for some of the other buyers that were out there. We also asked for a 30-day close of escrow period. Now, the seller countered back and asked for 45 days and 6 days after close of escrow to deliver the property. Why did they do this? Well, because they were moving out of a property and they had to find another property. So this sale was also contingent on them finding another property. Now, that will scare a lot of people, but for me, I was like, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll ask for a certain amount of dollars for what's called a seller holdback, meaning when the sale is complete, escrow will hold back a certain dollar or a certain percentage that's requested in an escrow account. What we also did was we asked for $120 per diem until the day that the property was delivered vacant, meaning that after we close, out of the money that was in the holdback, the seller would agree to pay us a per diem for every day that that property was not delivered vacant. Now, this kind of encourages the seller to get on their business and find a home and then move out as quickly as possible so that they can get all their money back. It assures us that if they stay a certain number of days, like let's say a month, that we can cover our mortgage until they leave. Now, we were fortunate, they found a place like a week after we opened escrow, so everything just worked out perfectly. We got our home inspection back, nothing huge came up, a few minor repairs that needed to be made, and then our appraisal came back at value, which in certain circumstances, it may come back under, which we're seeing sometimes that's happening a lot in the market, or it may come back above value, which doesn't happen a lot, even though it just happened to one of my clients who just recently closed. They actually stepped in with equity. I wish that would have been us, but our appraisal came back at value. So that was cool. So we got all of that taken care of, and then off to the lender it went. We were supposed to close, I believe it was like June 29th. We actually closed June 16th. So we were about 2 weeks prior to, before we were supposed to close. So the timetable moved up. Again, asking the right questions, knowing what you don't know, or making sure that your agent knows what they're supposed to know can ensure that your process can work the same way. Now, originally we talked to our contractor and asked him to give us an estimate on those repairs. It came back to like $1,300. I didn't think that we were gonna get it if we asked, but closed mouths don't get fed, so I asked anyway. The seller actually agreed to pay half of it. So I was cool because, again, I didn't think we were gonna get any of it. So we got half of it back, and we used that money to actually go toward our DIY project, which I'll talk about in another video. Now, one of the things that we ran across was that the complex had recently been in a litigation. So there was a lawsuit that was filed. And normally when a lender sees this, it's a red flag. They will not fund on a property that has undergone a litigation. Fortunately for us, our lender dug a little bit deeper and found out that the litigation was no longer pending, that it had been settled. The complex was actually suing a vendor and won and got the money for that. So it wasn't that the complex was getting sued, it was the opposite. So again, making sure that your team does the research. Our lender took it a step further and got the information that they needed, submitted it to underwriting, and everything was cool. Now, our process probably went a little bit faster than most because I'm a licensed agent, and again, there's a lot of stuff that I know that you as the everyday person are not going to know what to look for, what to ask for. So again, make sure that your agent is well versed in this. One thing I will say that as we were looking at properties in a different city, it was a little nerve-wracking because, let's face it, it's scary moving to a new place that's unfamiliar. But I would encourage you, keep an open mind, especially if you have a goal of purchasing a home and you just really want to get into this game, because that's the goal. Get into the game so that you have options and you create leverage for yourself so that somewhere down the future, you can use that property to your advantage from a financial standpoint. And that's exactly what we did. Now, we did do some renovation projects, and I'm gonna get into that into the next video. So make sure that you come back and stay tuned so that you can see what we did and learn some tips and tricks on how you can do it and save yourself tens of thousands of dollars.